Welcome down the rabbit hole, friends. We're here tonight to discuss the wackadoodle SHIT that's going on in this part of Kate Gosselin's book. Okay, the first section I'm going to talk about is dedicated to Hoffman's idea that TLC is responsible for manipulating, highly manipulating, the divorce for Kate and John Gosselin and contributing to John winding up like a hobo on the street while Kate sat pretty in her beautiful mansion with all 8 of her kids until she got rid of one. But the second section we're going to go over today is about a really sad series of journal entries Kate allegedly made and then somehow put on hard drives, left in her garbage. Our dirty raccoon rat Hoffman dug through the bananas and the mashed potatoes, pulled them out, put them into his hard drive, fixed them up, and allegedly pulled out all of these crazy journal entries that Kate has made about her seemingly conflicting feelings. These journal entries are confusing because they're about the corporal punishment that Kate admits to using against the children. And essentially, in some of the entries, she's sort of seeming guilty, maybe even ashamed of it, feeling like she should try to be a better mom and make better connections with her kids. And in other entries, she's really proud of herself for having, said I love you while she spanked the children or used a new kind of spanker on them that seemed to work best. It's difficult to absorb and dissect, but let's take a look at it further. Now, it's here that I also need to say, as I read through this part of the book, I can't help but be reminded of this thought I have in my head, totally made up, just based upon my research and things that I've read out on those crazy Reddit streets. This thought that I have in my head that maybe John Gosselin was a little bit into being with a girl who liked corporal punishment. You get what I'm saying? This is all alleged, and it's my personal opinion, but when I go down the rabbit hole, taking a look at John and Kate in their most rare and raw moments, like before they ever got married, what I think I see in John is like a nice, kind baby boy who wants to be taken care of by everyone around him. That lasts for a lot of his life until he goes through a midlife crisis and decides to get with a lot of younger women. He's still a nice, kind guy that everybody likes, but he's sort of taking advantage of people. It's just the sense that I get. Now, when it comes to Kate, when many people are like, how did he wind up with her? We all know that Kate Gosselin's ex-boyfriends have coined the phrase, she was a naughty little preacher's daughter. But there's no denying the reality that Kate's journal entries make me feel very uncomfortable and worried about what psychological torture these poor children have had to go through. Because Kate is truly in some wackadoodle world that the rest of us, we just can't understand. And it doesn't seem very healthy for her kids. Okay, but let's get started finishing up talking about what happened with the divorce. Okay, so this first section is entitled The Spin, and it's all about how Hoffman feels that TLC really manipulated everything that happened during the time that Kate and John decided to split and go forward with legalizing the divorce. There's a lot of back and forth between the parties. At first, TLC and Kate tell John that they want him to go forward and file for the divorce, and they're trying to control how he does things and what he writes about it. John is still under contract with TLC. So even if he wants to get away from this, even if he wants to have freedom to say what he desires to put out there to the world, he has to be careful about the steps that he takes because he's under contract. Hoffman writes, it didn't matter what John did or did not want. On June 14th, 2009, Julie May, that wonderful woman who stepped in and gotten Kate a hell of a lot of money, sent an email listing Discovery's 20 possible interview questions for John. And that same evening, John informed his attorney that he told Julie, I'm not going to answer any of those questions. He said, the network is glorifying my divorce. So part of what TLC wanted to have happen was to do this goodbye interview, the ending of an era interview where it was going to have to be aired as part of their TLC show, John and Kate Plus 8. John really didn't want to do this, but again, a big part of what happened, and I remember watching when all of this was going down and thinking, I just thought to myself, why doesn't John walk away from doing this? He's being made, he definitely looks like an ass in these interviews. Things are really being turned onto him. And at the time, I thought he was fully at fault. You guys know what I believe, the assumptions that I made about the divorce proceedings, right? So I was like, why is he giving these interviews? Doesn't he realize he looks like a jerk, and this is making him look like even more of a jerk, and it's hurting his family and his kids? Well, according to Hoffman, like, John knew that, and he wanted to get out of it. He didn't want to be there. He did not want to be doing this, but he was forced to by his TLC contract. Wow. For the episode where John and Kate like first discussed the fact that they're getting divorced, they had their most views ever. Approximately 10 million viewers tuned in to see the Gosselin divorce disaster unfold. And we know how this goes. We just saw this happen with Sister Wives and the Brown family. It was so popular last year to watch Sister Wives. They had their best season ever. It was all about Christine coming forward and divorcing Cody. A lot of things have been covered up until last season. Now, this season, we have another divorce in the mix with Janelle, but they're not getting as many views because it's sort of like the cat's already out of the bag. People aren't as interested. So this happened with John and Kate as well. Like initially, when they first, came out and said, guess what? This happy, wonderful Brady Bunch family that we've been showing you for all of these years, it's just not true. We made it up. And we'll give you a little bit of like a sneak peek of how like we're all falling apart here. And then the show will go on and we want you to keep watching. And we found that didn't really happen. The views didn't stay up where they were after the drama of the divorce faded away. Okay, so now it's time to tell us, their adoring public, that they're getting a divorce. And these 8 tiny miracles are still going to need a ton of ching-ching to keep them in the best of conditions in this mansion in Reading, Pennsylvania. But it's just really interesting to see the differences in John's statements versus Kate's. Once again, they were being controlled by TLC, but it kind of seems like from John's point of view, things weren't making sense. They were telling him to release one statement, and then Kate would release a statement before he could. So it seemed like even though they were trying to coach John and saying that they were helping him, ultimately it was always going to be they're actually working for the betterment of Kate. So John's initial statement read like this, and it was given on June 22nd, 2009. Okay, John says, "This afternoon, Kate filed for divorce. Our kids are still my number one priority. I love them and want to make sure they stay happy, healthy, and safe. My job is being the best, most supportive, and loving father that I can be to my kids, and not being married to Kate doesn't change that. This will be a difficult transition for all of us, but Kate and I will work out a schedule that enables our kids to have plenty of quality time with both of us at home in Pennsylvania. In terms of my marriage, it's no secret that the past 6 months or so have been very difficult for Kate and me. We are no different than other couples and parents who are facing a crossroads in their marriage. I am, of course, deeply saddened that we are divorcing." Now, here's what Kate had to say the very next day in a People magazine article. It was entitled, "Kate Gosselin on Divorce, John Left Me No Choice." Okay. "Over the course of this weekend, John's activities had left me no choice but to file legal procedures in order to protect myself and our children," Kate said in a statement. "While there are reasons why it was appropriate and necessary for me to initiate this proceeding, I do not wish to discuss those reasons at this time. Only on my show, so tune in." I just added that part. "In the hope that all issues will be resolved amicably between John and myself. As always, guys, my first priority remains our children." So it's definitely like a very lopsided way of viewing the situation, okay? Now, we know in the background, according to Hoffman, Kate and John had actually been separated for quite a while, and John had wanted to get counseling. He had wanted to work things out. Kate did not want to do any of that. That's all here in the book. This is a totally false narrative in many ways, if what Hoffman has had to tell us is 100% true. Okay. And then Hoffman gives us a copy of the divorce paperwork that John tried to follow. And basically, like, his side of the paperwork just seems like so even-keeled. He wants to file for a no-fault divorce, like not blame anyone. And he also wants to have an equitable distribution of all of their funds and their assets, like leaving the house for Kate. It just seems like it's very stable. It's like stabilized, and he's giving up a lot of things. But after he sent this over to Kate and her lawyers to take a look at it, Discovery Communications and Kate, they went back to People magazine, and they just had a lot of unfair statements to say about John, not the least of which is this: John did not want any part of counseling. He wanted out of this marriage. I mean, according to Hoffman, John was the one who was requesting counseling from the beginning. And Hoffman ends this section by saying, "Discovery's handling and control of John and Kate's divorce was the deciding factor as to why Kate Gosselin is a millionaire and living in a mansion today. And John Gosselin is broke and struggling to make ends meet. Okay, friends, moving on to Kate Gosselin's completely like batshit crazy journal entries where she's like talking herself down, like patting herself on the back, also being like concerned and full of shame about things that she does, while at the same time like turning to God and be like, he means for it all to be this way for me. It's just the way it's supposed to be. It's highly like difficult to look through these journal entries and not feel like there must have been utter chaos, like emotional chaos in the house for John and the children, because Kate's journals like really reflect a lot of up and down from her. And as we know, John has stated that the therapist he made Kate go to basically said that he thought she had bipolar disorder and she should be treated for that. And she's completely rejected that possibility, according to John. All right, so these journal entries are like from before they even got the TLC show. So it's starting out in 2006, and Kate is writing on and on about how she's been really impatient with her kids. She's struggling and she's using a lot of corporal punishment to just make it through the day. According to Hoffman, Kate writes things like, she was less than patient today with her kids. She got so tired that her fuse is non-existent. She understands that it's not fair to her kids, and they are basically dealing with an impatient mother. She's aware of what she's doing, and she wishes that she could stop, but she can't. And to me, this just like, I mean, we all have some of these feelings, but the fact, knowing what was going on with Kate all along, knowing what's happened with her, and the way that her moods are so up and down all the time. And when she says, like, I've been impatient with my kids, I mean, I remember seeing on the show that what I was looking at didn't look like impatient. It looked like you're being horrible to her children. You're using like a really nasty tone towards your husband. You are almost like verbally abusive at times. So, you know, I think the way that she's wording it in her journals does not like really match up with what we saw on the show. In July 2006, Kate makes this little entry about Colin, which is kind of interesting. It says that Alexis had gotten injured and Colin brought her a drink without being asked to because he cared about her. Kate thought this was really nice. And she talks about giving Colin a lot of praise because she realizes that he gets a lot of negative attention and doesn't get much positive attention. She says that he is often so naughty, she doesn't know how to handle him, and she wants to try to show him more love. So from a very early time, Kate recognizes she cannot get along very well with this specific child. And when you have like a 2 or 3-year-old and you're starting to already create this narrative in your head, like this is the naughty child, I don't get along with this child, I really have to say that I think that then there's probably something going on with you and your parenting. You know, this is a very young child. We cannot have like heightened expectations that I mean, I think it's amazing that he would go up to his sister and care enough to like make amends with her or like do something nice for her because she was hurt. That shows that he does have like concern for others at a very young age. I just think that Kate's expectations are so ridiculously high that any kind of child that steps out of line a little bit, this is just what I'm seeing from a distance and from everything I've read. It's like when a child steps out of line even a little bit, Kate is immediately getting on top of them verbally and physically and expecting them to step back in line. And if they don't, well, the devil must be in them. And we do hear some of this here. She is repeatedly like referring to like, I'll just have to pray more. I have to pray that God like gets inside of him, makes him better. When you have that kind of mindset, it may at times for some people keep you from actually like sitting down and thinking about what this kid needs. What does this child need from you? It's not always easy. As you guys know, I have a background in pediatric like mental health stuff. I've worked in facilities where we are housing children who cannot live at home because their behaviors are so extreme. So I know and I understand that there are situations where kids are just not safe in their home. You don't have to come after me for that because I've sat and counseled parents about, you know, letting them know like your child is, they're coming in as an emergency. And they're saying, I'm just not sure if I feel comfortable leaving my child here. And they're talking to me and the behaviors that they're describing, I'm like, that does not sound safe in your home. You really need to think about leaving your child in this kind of environment. So it's hard. People do have to do it. But we're talking about, a 3-year-old, 4-year-old little boy who, doesn't want to wear the clothes that you picked out for him that match all the other kids. The expectations are just not the same expectations that I believe most other parents have for their children. Okay, next, pretty sadly, there's this series of entries in which Kate is just talking about like the different behaviors that the kids have when they're out and about, like normal behaviors that kids will have in Target where they're not listening or they're dancing around or they're like, heaven forbid, being like too joyful in the store. I don't know. She will talk about how like all the kids are good except for the twins. She talks about like one of the twins being grouchy and then therefore had to receive a series of spankings in the back of the car with a spanker that Kate has added to the family's van emergency supply stash. So she takes it out and spanks one of the twins in the back of the van. And I am not someone who's against corporal punishment. I know like everybody has to run their family like in the best way that they possibly can, within the confines of like not hurting their children and staying within the law. I do believe every child is different, and there are certainly some children who would not respond at all to corporal punishment. It's not something that we use in our home, but I grew up with corporal punishment, and I don't, there's nothing about it. I think that I turned out to be a pretty good person in many ways. But it is really hard to hear this from Kate because I think like she has so much help. They're in a situation where they always have helpers around. They've got, so many of the things that they need where they should be less stressed out. They've got the big van, they've got money, they've got food, they've got everything they need. So they should be a little bit less stressed out. And then the things she's talking about, like spanking the kids for, it's that one of the twins was grouchy. And then she says later, the girl eventually happied up, according to Kate, after receiving the spanking. Later on in September of 2006, Kate makes this journal entry that I find really interesting. She talks about how she realizes she was a quote-unquote horrible mommy today and that she failed all the way. She said that she was really awful to what child? I think we all know it was Colin, because apparently she says that he was awful to her. In 2006, her twins were heading off to kindergarten in that year. So the sextuplets must have been like maybe 3 or 4. And she's saying that Colin was awful to her. I mean, I know, when my kids were 2, there were hard times. But I definitely would look at it like, this is a toddler tantrum. This is a child who's struggling, not like he's being awful to me. She says that everything that Colin does just really irritates her, talking so much shit about him. It's so sad. It's really sad. I hope that, I don't know. I feel so bad for that kid. I want to say, like, I hope that Colin hasn't read this, but, like, his mom has totally abandoned him. So what would this crap mean to him? Of course she feels this way. She abandoned him and left him in a mental institution. So sad. Oh, yeah. In this entry, Kate actually says he's only 2 years old, but she's beside herself that she can't control him. Like, what's wrong? What's wrong with this child? He won't sit perfectly in the chair and wear the perfect gymboree clothing and keep them absolutely clean for the cameras and all the shots we need to do. All the other kids can do it. I spanked the joy and the childhood right out of them. And this child, he's just keeping all those wiggles in his body despite all the spankings. It's just so sad. It's over the top and wrong to assume that kids this young would be able to do these kinds of things. Okay, so she does say she went to like have him sit in the corner because he's not behaving. She doesn't like what he's doing, and he just refuses to sit in the corner. I don't remember my 2-year-olds ever. I guess I was not very good with them, but they wouldn't sit on I did have a timeout chair. No one ever sat in it. It never worked for us. Okay, so she can't get him to sit in the timeout area. So then she was really rough with him in front of the other girls, and she does feel guilty for treating him like that, and she says that she'll try to be better tomorrow. And then she goes on to say, like, look, this is what I gotta do. I gotta hanker down and I gotta pray She's just like, I gotta get God in here. It's the only thing that's gonna help me. I mean, I know some people are saying like I could try some bipolar medication, but we're just gonna have to take a pill of God, just put a little God in my morning breakfast, my morning cereal, my morning coffee, and drink it down. She says that she'll pray for her relationship with Colin, but she doesn't understand him. She can't understand him. I mean, he's 2 and he won't sit in the timeout chair. Like, how is she ever going to be able to like understand this kid? He constantly wants to do things because she doesn't want him to do them. I don't know. It makes me wonder like about the other kids. Like, why were they so well behaved if this is like the worst of it, She says that Colin is sweet, cute, and smart, but she just can't understand that little hooligan. She prays to the Lord for her to be able to understand him and feel only love for him, because right now she's not feeling a lot of love, and that's sad for her. I mean, I understand. There are definitely times where I've had trouble, so I can't look at these entries and say, like, I don't understand. I understand some level of, like, you're not always happy with your situation. You can become frustrated with your children, but, like, her like temperature reading is really off, right? It's like she is so focused on control that she can't even bear like a child that's 2 acting like he's 2. What's being asked of them, this filming, always looking a certain way. I mean, just even the way that she always had to dress them the same. I mean, I have trouble just even getting my kids to wear mismatching socks, let alone like 8 kids have to wear all the same color socks and they all have to wear like same shoes and everything. Like she probably was not letting them be individuals in any way either. And Colin probably also really sensed that. And that might have been part of like, I'm not doing this, I'm doing it my way. Not only pushing back against her, but pushing back for his own like individual identity. Like we're not all the same here. And then Kate also writes like, she's doing some praying. She's praying for God to help her like enjoy spending time with her kids more and play with them more, because she does write that she felt kind of bad because Maddie and Kara, the twins, had actually talked to John and eventually talked to her about how they're sad because mommy never plays with them. We've heard about that. Kate was always in the kitchen, kind of like sitting on a stool, supposedly like just organizing and labeling things in the kitchen. Some of the next entries, a lot of them are about her relationship with this couple called the Carsons. The Carsons are interesting, and I think we'll talk more about them as time goes on, but Beth Carson ends up becoming one of Kate's best friends, and it's Beth Carson. There are people from the church who help out with the kids and help John and Kate. Beth Carson's husband is the one who gets John like a really good job, a really good IT job, where he ends up making like a good amount of money, and eventually he's going to leave that too because they make money from the show. But she stays close with Beth Carson for as far as we know, well after the show is over. I will try to put this on the screen, but in this area of the book, it seems to me that Hoffman's just trying to let us know that there's a lot of language, there's a lot of verbiage in these journal entries where Kate is specifically like calling out people by their race. Like, this thing happened today and it was a bunch of Hispanics that were all around causing the issue. This thing happened today and it was like black people that were around doing whatever. It's just like always calling people out by like what their race is, like that means something to her. And I think he's just emphasizing here that this is something that comes up a lot in the journal entries. And one example of that is like, she'll talk about how John's going to take the kids to the American Girl store. God, they had like so much money. That store is ridiculous. But anyway, he goes to take the twins to the American Girl store, and she talks about how inconvenient it was that there was like a Hispanic heritage parade going on. So it was like hard for them to cross the street and like whatever interactions John had with the people, but just kind of like talking about how annoying it was for her. Kate also writes in her journal about how people are judging her at church because she's gotten caught like screaming at John in the hallway. of the church, and people are like looking at her weird, and then the pastor will give like a sermon in the church about like trying to get along with your husband that may or may not have been directed at Kate, which may be why she decided to stop going to church, which comes up later in the book. This is also like disturbing to me. So this is a later entry, October 2006, where she says she had another 2-year-old rough day. It's just awful with 2-year-olds because right before nap, the kids stripped their clothes off. That doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But then they had to get spankings. So I guess stripping your clothes off would get you like a spanking with a spanker. And Kate admits that once that part was over and I guess everybody got spankings, Kate got out of control with Colin, but she says, thank God I sent him to his room so that I could settle down. And she just says, I absolutely hate having 2-year-olds. Now at this time, this is hard. Kate is still working. She's working some shifts as a nurse. And she does write in her journal about like how awful this is. She can't wait to be done with this kind of like shitty lifestyle where she actually has to work for a living. And then in November of 2006, she's getting really excited, and the journal entries turn into all this talk about how Discovery Health is going to be making a show about the kids, and she cannot wait to have this happen because she sees this as like the light at the end of the tunnel where she won't have to work anymore. In January of 2007, there's a sad entry in which Kate is mad because the kids are really sick and they have to go to the pediatrician, and she feels like the pediatrician is an idiot and doesn't know what he's doing, and Kate knows much better than he does. She's already told him over the phone what she wants. He's not giving it to her, so she's not happy. You know, she's just very unhappy with this person. She also uses the term retarded. I think, according to Hoffman, that's what he's stating in here to describe people she doesn't like. But again, like after all this had happened and the kids are sick and she's mad, she again turns her anger towards Colin because she says like all this is going on and she's mad at this pediatrician. He won't give her what he wants, but Colin also won't give her what he wants. Sounds like he was the classic scapegoat because he poured some beans on the floor and he didn't like the consequence. So as he walked by the kitchen table, he pushed over a high chair. And Kate says that she was instantly so angry, she felt like she couldn't control herself. Kate said that she grabbed him and spanked him as hard as she could. And she was concerned she might have seriously injured him. Hoffman writes this. Kate said that she was instantly so angry and she grabbed him and spanked him as hard as she could and thought that she may seriously injure him. So then she sent him to his crib and whipped him into it very hard. So I guess she kind of threw him into it. Kate Gosselin said that for the first time she thought she might really lose it. And she was glad that she left him in his crib until John came home from work. Kate wrote today was the day that she felt like she might seriously injure a child. Kate goes on to talk about how Colin, like she just really can't understand him. She says he's usually kind and caring and tender and nice until his temper flares up. Kate says she doesn't like that little Colin doesn't know how to handle his frustration and anger. Again, he must have been 3 because it's 2007. 3 years old. But apparently beating him and screaming at him is her way of trying to calm him down and make him understand. Kate then laments that she didn't even get the chance to have Colin apologize to her because she had other things to do. Now she really feels like a horrible mom. She feels like a mean, awful mom and asks God to make her kind and loving and patient and caring. The Lord should also help the Gosselin kids to know that what Kate is doing is really the best for them. Okay, this next entry will be the last entry for this video, and the next several chapters and sections are all about like the physical discipline and the verbal ABUSE that seems to be going on as evidenced by additional journal entries. But this last journal entry that I'm going to go over now is difficult to talk about, and I think it lends to the idea that Kate was instilling a lot of inappropriate thoughts and feelings and psychological ramifications for her children. through the discipline that she was providing them. So here we have in April of 2007, Kate is talking about how it's a great day at the house because the very first episode of John and Kate Plus 8 aired and they received really great ratings. So she's very much looking forward to what the future holds. But because of everything that's going on, discipline has become a rite of passage in this house. They really have to keep it up because they know that they're going to need to be as disciplined as possible to be able to stay on this show and make sure that the kids are doing a good job. So Hoffman writes, discipline is the Gosselin children's normal. They get daily spankings and apparently they love it, according to Kate. Kate went from describing an adorable moment with little Aiden in one sentence to then describing her disciplining him at night before bed. And she says while she was disciplining him, she said to him, "I love you." And then he looked up at her immediately and said, "I love you too." And Kate's heart completely melted, hearing his small voice saying, "I love you," while she's, according to Hoffman, quote unquote, beating him. There are several additional entries, and a lot of them are they very much mirror what Kate allegedly had to say in that one journal entry. So it's difficult to hear, to pair physical abuse with "but I love you," this is how we express love. We could really create a lot of issues for a child psychologically. And then obviously, you're physically hurting them. And to do it all or to do at least some of it in the name of, we're getting a show now. These kids have got to get better behaved. Pull out that spanker. That's what makes it 100 times more wrong. And I think that's what so many of us have a major problem with when it comes to everything that we're finding out about Kate Gosselin, especially in this book. Thank you so much for joining me here tonight. I believe I might be getting poison ivy. I'm scared. My son had a wonderful day on his field trip, and I'm just sending lots of love and wonderful fall thoughts out to all of you. Check out my Halloween ghost earrings. I'm going to be doing another giveaway with earrings like this soon, and hopefully tomorrow I will be getting up another episode of Kate Gosselin, How She Fooled the World. Thanks for joining me here today. I hope you'll join me tomorrow as we head down yet another rabbit hole.